Good evening. Tonight I'd like to meditate with you on the Gospel for Wednesday of the 29th week in Ordinary Time. It's taken from Luke chapter 12, verses 39 to 48. Jesus said to his disciples, "Be sure of this, if the master of the house had known the hour when the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be prepared, for at an hour you do not expect, the Son of Man will come." Then Peter said, "Lord, is this parable meant for us or for everyone?" And the Lord replied, "Who then is the faithful and prudent steward, whom the master will put in charge of his servants to distribute the food allowance at the proper time? Blessed is that servant, whom his master on arrival finds doing so. Truly I say to you, he will put him in charge of all his property. But if that servant says to himself, 'My master is delayed in coming,' and begins to beat the men servants and the maid servants, to eat and drink and get drunk, then that servant's master will come on an unexpected day and at an unknown hour, and will punish the servant severely, and assign him a place with the unfaithful. That servant who knew his master's will, but did not make preparations nor act in accord with his will, shall be beaten severely. And the servant who was ignorant of his master's will, but acted in a way deserving of a severe beating, shall be beaten only lightly. Much will be required of the person entrusted with much, and still more will be demanded of the person entrusted with more." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. And today's gospel then deals with stewardship. It deals with stewardship of the many gifts that God gives us. But what are the qualities of a good steward? Sometimes people hear the words stewardship and they think only about money. But when I think of stewardship, I think about one who has been entrusted with many gifts from God. What are the qualities? The first is that we be vigilant, that we have vigilant hearts. But this vigilance means not only staying awake, but also having an awareness of the presence of the master. The unfaithful servant believes his master is not coming home. He eats, he drinks, he gets drunk, he beats the maid servants and the men servants as if the master was not there. But the faithful servant, the good steward, is aware always of the presence of the master. We too must be aware of the presence of the divine master in our life, his protective and merciful gaze upon us. We must be aware of his presence when we do little things and great things, difficult things. Are we aware? And are our hearts awake? When I was a child, one year I kept on falling asleep at Mass. My father would sometimes take us for 6 p.m. Mass at Old St. Francis de Sales Church in Toledo, and it had these old yellow lights, and the priest would go on and on and on, and I would fall asleep. Finally, my dad said to me, "You know what, you've been falling asleep at Mass week after week. It must be from watching too much football on Sunday. You're banned from watching football until you can stay awake." We have to stay awake, be vigilant for the Lord, and be prepared, for we do not know when the Son of Man will come. So the first quality of a good steward is to be vigilant. The second quality of a good steward is to be faithful. Who then is the faithful and prudent steward whom the master will put in charge of his servants to distribute the food allowance at the proper time? To be faithful means to be faithful in, again, little things and in great things. To be a person of integrity, to keep the commandments, especially to love God and to love neighbor, to be faithful to our responsibilities, to our spouse, to our children, to be faithful to the work that God puts before us. What's another quality of a good steward after being vigilant and being faithful? It's being prudent. Who then is the faithful and prudent steward? Prudence is the virtue that helps us to choose the best means to accomplish something. We have many ways of doing something. Some are foolhardy and some are very smart. For example, we boys wanted to have fun. My parents bought a refrigerator once. We had the box, and we went up to the top of the steps and decided we'd have great fun by sliding down the steps on top of that box. Of course, we fell off the box, fell down the stairs, smashed our face on the floor. It wasn't a very prudent thing to do. How can we make the best use of the gifts God has given us? So we must be vigilant, faithful, and prudent. But the good steward also distributes the food allowance at the proper time. That is, he's generous. He doesn't keep everything for himself. He's not selfish. He seeks the good of others. This is what true love is. So the good steward then must be vigilant, must be faithful, must be prudent, and must be generous. St. Paul was such a steward in the letter to the Ephesians, which was taken from the 3rd chapter of Ephesians, verses 2 through 12, in the first reading of today's Mass. St. Paul describes himself in this way: He says, "You have heard of the stewardship of God's grace that was given to me for your benefit, namely that the mystery was made known to me by revelation." God gave him a gift. He was a steward of that gift. He wasn't the owner of it. It was a gift given for the good of others. Again, love seeks the good of the other, to reveal the mystery of Christ, the mystery of the riches, the inscrutable riches of Christ, to reveal these riches to the Gentiles and to bring a light to all peoples of the plan of the mystery of our salvation that God has designed, that was previously hidden. And so St. Paul used his gifts in the service of others. Let us think about our own stewardship if we had to render an account. Are we vigilant? Are we faithful? Are we prudent? And are we generous? It's something to think about, because the master of the house will one day return. We know not when, but we need to be prepared. Stay awake, be prepared, for you know not the hour when the Son of Man will come.